Let's do quickly the Vols. A lot of folks want to get your perspective on Tennessee coming into the Louisiana matchup tonight. We know officially it's Louisiana. When I saw that draw, I immediately texted you and was like, uh-oh. Because that was like that was the team where you're like, who matches up the best with Tennessee? Probably Louisiana. And I was like, but then you look at the line, opens at 11. I'm okay. Am I right to be okay about Louisiana today?
Yeah, and I probably should apologize for putting that out into the world.
You did this to me, Will.
Well, it was kind of like looking at the four factors on, Ken's site, looking at some of the teams that Tennessee struggled with, and my first thought was, well, Tennessee struggled with teams with this sort of profile. And then you actually go and watch their film and, watch a couple of their games, get invested in, like, who else have they played that's of, somewhat similar quality. Because obviously being in the Sun Belt, you're not going to play, like, Arkansas every week. The two things that pop up are, number one, lost by 28 to Texas, which is sort of a big deal when Tennessee beat Texas. Number two, they run an old school, and it's funny to say this as a Tennessee viewer, old school offense, 4 out, 1 post in that never, and really it's 2 post in that never, leave the paint. And Tennessee has really handled offenses like that basically all season long. Post first teams have not really had much success against UT, I would say. Like, you could point to Liam Robbins having some good runs against Tennessee, but Vandy had a bunch of shooters around him. Lafayette really doesn't attempt many threes. They have one of the lowest 3-point attempt rates in the field. So,
which is weird too that the 3-point stuff would plague Tennessee, because I think their teams are shooting 26% from deep against Tennessee on the year. I was going through Hoop Math stuff where I'm like, that's weird. Why am I so terrified of 3-point shooting teams when Tennessee is ostensibly good?
Well, it's just the single game variance. Like, anything can happen in a one-off situation. And so that's why you look at, like, Giant Killers on ESPN or Bracket Breakers on The Athletic, the OGs of the Giant Killer game, by the way. They have, everybody's pointing out the same thing, which is that, to beat a higher seeded opponent, you need to include, like, some amount of variance in your game, whether it's like forcing a lot of turnovers, owning the boards, taking a lot of threes, slowing the game down, whatever it may be. And Lafayette really doesn't do any of that. This kind of feels like drawing Longwood again. And so, I mean, at the risk of looking like a huge idiot in, 24 hours, I do think Tennessee's going to be fine in this first round game. It's just not like on paper, of course, a very good matchup for the Dog. The rest of the weekend's more interesting, where you've got, you basically have the Tennessee play-in game of sorts of Duke Oral Roberts at 7 tonight. And, when that got announced, Sean Paul, who's a writer I respect, not just the writer of the song Temperature, he, noted that he didn't really like that matchup for ORU. And then the more I dove in, I was kind of like, well, I kind of actually do. Duke does not shut down ball screens very well, which is all of what Oral Roberts does. They have struggled with teams that can shoot it, like Miami. Oral Roberts reminds me a lot of, like, mid-major Miami. And Duke did not look good against them this year. So I think there's a real chance Tennessee, if they were to advance to the round of 32, would play Oral Roberts instead, which is kind of interesting to say. And I think people are sort of overhyping the Duke thing because they got hot late. But, we've done research to show the 2 most important months of the season for tournament performance are November and December, which is not when Duke was playing their best basketball. So
a lot of guys out, though, at that time.
A lot of guys out for sure, but I mean, people need just to look back at Tennessee last year. I mean, I hate to bring it up, but everybody, Tennessee was basically the hottest team in the field, more or less, going into last season's tournament. And what did it do for you? A bunch of nothing. Yeah. So, I mean, you could make the same argument about Duke. You could do about Texas A&M. I caution overhyping the hot teams for sure. Unless they're like a 1 or a 2 seed, and then it's just like, well, they've been good all year.
I was going to say, that's not hot. They're just good all year. Yeah. All the 1 seeds are not hot at the moment. They're just really good basketball teams. That's not a thing.
But I would say my expectation, minimum expectation really, Tennessee should make the Sweet 16 with this draw. you're going to have the Oral Roberts matchup is the only one of the possible three that actually gives me some pause, because Tennessee more or less, not exactly of course, but more or less played something like this with Missouri, though obviously Connor Vanover is a lot taller than Kobe Brown. And it hasn't gone well when they've played systems like that. So I could see Oral Roberts exploiting them a little bit. With that being said, like I obviously mentioned, they match up well with Louisiana. I think they match up quite well with Duke on paper, actually, because Duke does not shoot the ball well. They struggle with turnovers a lot. Their guards have had a big problem with ball pressure this year, so which feeds right into like the Jemai Meshack, Josiah Jordan James, Santiago Vescovi game. So I think Tennessee should make the Sweet 16 at minimum. And beyond that, it gets quite favorable, but I know better than to be super optimistic about a Tennessee program in the postseason. So I am holding back.
That's fair. Sweet 16 is, I think most fans, even with after Zakai, like I think they're okay. I think most fans just want to get out of the opening weekend. I think that's the main goal here. The most interesting player for you in the tournament is who?
There's two ways you could go here. Number one is obviously Branon Miller, because obviously, I mean, everything off the court is huge, of course, but I mean, when he's on the court, he is arguably the best player in America. Aside, I mean, like you could say like the Zach Edey thing, but I mean, we've seen big posts not really work out in March before, so.